Welcome to the Why Even Care podcast. This is your host, Mauricio, and today I have a great friend of mine that I haven't had the chance in having a conversation with him in a long time because he's been a busy man, Dennis Ojogho. How have you been?
I've been great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on, man. I wanted to start this. I wanted to get some momentum on this. I wanted to get some confidence. That way when I had the opportunity to ask you to come on, I had something to present you with to say, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to build. I want to get your message out there. And so far it's been good. We've had a couple guests. We've had great episodes. We've had great support. We're going to grow slowly but surely, but we know we're going to get there. So I'm glad that you came on now, and hopefully you'll come on in the future. But for now, people have asked me, how have you been? I've always said that I know Dennis will be great just because of the type of person that you are, but how have you been exactly?
Thank you.
How's everything going?
Hey, everything's going well, man. I really appreciate that. I'm back in LA. I've been back for a year and a half. I went to Harvard College for 4 years between 2012 and 2016. After having grown up in Los Angeles and Mid-City and Boyle Heights, I spent some time in both neighborhoods. And I'm doing really well. I'm working at Community Coalition in South Central, and that's where I live now. I live in South LA, and it's been really awesome working with the high school youth. We do a lot of work in development, leadership development, and fighting for social justice, especially in education and criminal justice reform. So it's been really great being there for the last year and a half, and family's all doing well. And I'm really just excited to be working at a place that gives me fulfillment. Yeah.
So a lot of people obviously know you personally, and when they say they know you personally, I mean they know that you went to LA High for high school. They know you were a basketball player. We all knew you had something special. Obviously, that starts from somewhere far beyond those days. Yeah. Me knowing you and me obviously having to do my homework before getting on this, I discovered that your parents came out of Nigeria.
That's right.
When is it that they came over here?
Yeah, so my parents both immigrated in the early 80s, and they were part of a large wave of Nigerians who had the opportunity to come to the United States after the government was able to provide different government scholarships, academic scholarships. And so my parents benefited from that, and they both ended up in LA meeting here.
Yeah. So they met here.
They met here, yes.
And then that they got together, and then eventually you came along. And growing up in this area, what are some things that you've seen growing up that have helped you become who you are?
Right. So I think that growing up, I mean, I really have to just start with my mom, who is a social worker, who I think through her own background growing up and everything that she went through to come to this country, and then the work that she's doing now, it helped her become a parent that was very conscious about how she was raising me and really trying to put me in the best position possible to succeed. And so something that I that I recognize about my childhood is that for a long time, I really had this, these visions and these dreams of trying to, first of all, do my best in school. I think that that's really where it starts with, because in Nigerian culture, and this is something that a lot of folks at home may be familiar. You've seen these memes, like Nigerian parents do not mess around when it comes to school. If you're not getting your stuff done, it's like a really, really big deal. And so I think that it started there, and eventually I just kind of took on that identity. And so by the time of high school, it wasn't so much like I'm trying to just do this for my mom. It's more like, all right, no, I realize that this is for my future, and this is what I got to do. And so growing up, I think that I think that had a big influence on me. I think that it wasn't until later on when I got to college and saw pretty much more parties than I had ever seen as a high school student. I realized like, wow, like during high school, I was really like laser focused.
Yeah.
And I think that it was, you know, for good and for bad. I think that one of my regrets is that, oh, you know, maybe I could have in high school been a little more, loosened up, socialized a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think by senior year, I got better at that and I was starting to go to more stuff and stuff. But I know that I think that was just kind of a byproduct of like being so super focused in high school and being so focused on, you know, the next step, getting to college. Was that sometimes it's okay to like slow down and
take a step back and enjoy.
Exactly.
So personally, like I said, we've obviously had a lot of discussion before recording and going live. I've known you since we were in 8th grade. Right before going to LA High, and obviously I didn't know anything about you. You were just this big kid who would play basketball. And I knew that you loved the sport. I knew that you loved the sport. I didn't know to what extent. At that moment in time when we began our 9th grade year, that's when I really got to know you. And it was one of those things for me. I was kind of in shock of how much you really like sports in general, how much you were so dedicated into schoolwork, and it kind of caught me off guard of how you can actually manage everything. Straight A's and still be able to play sports and still have somewhat of a social life, because you've always been a great person. You've always been very positive. You've always been friendly. You've always been helpful in class, biology class. You would always help everyone out. So how did you balance all that stuff going to high school?
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that, and you're a great person too. So
I try. I've had my lows, I've had my highs, but I'm trying to stay on the highs.
Yeah, man. Well, I guess how I try to balance everything is by, I think, just taking it like one step at a time and not treating the schoolwork as something that was, oh, I have to do this. And I try to treat work like that now too, and I think that's what helps. So what I mean by that is that, like, if you spend a third of your day at work or at school, and when you're in college, like even more so doing the work, and if you are looking at it like, dang, I gotta do this, like you're dragging your feet and you're not like looking at the positives of it, then you're just not gonna do it. You have to find the joy and like find what you like about it. So for me, what helped with balancing school is that I found a way to really enjoy learning, enjoy the process of learning. And even after the homework was done, going and doing like extra reading, or just finding a way to just, you know, in that biology class, or in that English class, like just really finding like, how do I relate to this and how do I make this fun, right? Once you make school fun, once you make work fun, then it's not work anymore. It's not school anymore. It's just learning and growing as a person. And so with basketball, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, like it was tough, especially once we got to once I got to varsity and balancing school and practice. It was hard. I mean, I remember my senior year, I was taking AP statistics, and that class was a 0 period. So I had to be at school at 7 for that. And then sometimes practice in the evening wouldn't end until 5. So it was like these really long days. And I just remember being so exhausted sometimes, but it was just kind of like, I would not change anything, because honestly, high school was a blast, and especially senior year when I was doing all of that stuff. It was really great. Newspaper, all that stuff. That's
one of the things that senior year was actually a big thing. So we took 2 different directions. Senior year, I didn't want to play. I wanted to go and start working, and it was tough finding a job, obviously still being in school, but seeing you from the outside, at the end of 11th grade year, there was the opportunity to start a journalism class.
Right.
So now there's a funny story to that, and I've actually gotten a hold of her, and I've had a conversation with Ms. Burke about that, and I wanted to thank her for being such a great person to all of us and doing what she did. The funny story was, at the end of 11th grade year, when we were looking for the new classroom for the journalism class, I had failed her 11 English B class. So when she brought up that she wanted to start a journalism class, I had said, I want to do that, because I've always seen myself, maybe never really put it out there, but I've always wanted to help. I've always wanted to lead. I always wanted to get that right story that's going to make a difference out there.
Right.
Hence the podcast, and hence trying to have people like you on here. So I always knew I had that itch. So I said, hey, I want to do this. Coincidentally enough, the next day, Ms. Burke says, hey, I have another candidate. And in my head, I'm like, please don't be Dennis. Please don't be Dennis. And she says, yes, his name is Dennis. I'm like, no, it's Dennis. So we go, and I said, you know what? I feel Dennis is a great candidate. Obviously, that's going to be the next president in 2036. So I have no fits. Hopefully, I can still be it. And she said, you know what? I believe in you. Even though you failed my class, I believe in you. I know what you can do. And obviously, Dennis is a straight A student. He's a hard worker. I believe in both of you guys. And I'm thinking of making you both co-editors in chief. So we went on and we agreed to that. And then I realized that I didn't deserve that title. At least in my eyes, I didn't deserve that title. So I took a step back even from the journalism class as well as basketball. And then I saw you take on that role. You became editor-in-chief for the high school newspaper. You were you one of the captains of the basketball team?
Yeah.
You were also one of the captains of the basketball team. And then schoolwork, straight A student. So everything was meant for you. Now, I'm not saying that I couldn't have done it, or anyone else that is failing can't do the same thing and strive to be something more. But it's also, hey, you have great competition. And that was you. And I always knew that, hey, if anyone deserves to do it, it deserves to be Dennis. So not only was it basketball and school, it was also editor-in-chief. And how was that exactly? How was that journey?
Right. Hey, man. So first of all, I got to say that the decision you made as a 17-year-old to, step away and, I, at the time, like, for example, I would not have known, like, I don't know what you were going through, like, personally. Like, I'm sure you had your reasons for why you had to step away and to work and support your family, right? Like, that's very real. And the fact that you had I think just the wherewithal, the wisdom to no, this is my capacity, this is what I can do, and I'll find my way to contribute and find my space another way. Like, major props for that, man.
Thank you.
And I think that, as far as being editor-in-chief, but could you repeat the question? Like,
so aside from basketball and schoolwork, you also had to balance the editor-in-chief. Yeah. So how was that experience?
Okay, so that was also tough. As I was mentioning, senior year, everything just kind of came together, and thankfully with basketball, I was good enough to be on varsity, but I was not the best player on the team. So I was just I was there. I was coming off the bench, and I was one of like 3 captains, but I think that I was more of a kind of off the court captain, and I think that my responsibility was more to be somebody who can help mentor some of the younger juniors that were on the team and be a role model. I think as far as like on the court, thankfully the duties weren't too much, so I was able to focus on editor-in-chief, being in the newspaper, which was a lot. That was like a full-time job. Yeah. And so like I said, senior year was crazy, trying to balance everything. It even got crazier the second semester because Miss Burke went on maternity leave.
Yes,
and
true.
We had a substitute teacher for the last 2 to 3 months of the year, and pretty much substitute teacher
let it all on you.
Yeah, just all right, Dennis. Ms. Burke says you got this. You know how it works, and we were able to produce an issue every month for those 3 months, and so that was one of the great accomplishments. And I honestly think that it was just sheer, gonna go through it, gonna just work really hard. And we had a good team too. We had a really good team, some great artists, great writers, great editors to help make it happen. I mean, editor-in-chief, it was a title that put a lot of responsibility on me, but it wasn't just me. So I think that just learning to lean on my team, just like in basketball and the newspaper, is what made it happen.
So all that happens, and then graduation time comes. All the hard work is done for both of us. Obviously, we all knew that there was only the Ivy League schools for you. We knew it was either Princeton, Yale, and obviously Harvard. And we knew obviously that knew you personally. We knew that Harvard was the main choice. When you finally got that letter of acceptance, how did you feel?
It was an amazing feeling. I'll share the story because it connects to what we're talking about. Just how did I balance everything senior year? So it was in early February, and I had already gotten accepted to one school, USC.
Yeah.
And they had sent me this really awesome package. It was a big mail. Like, you could, and just feeling it, you knew by the weight that it was an acceptance letter. And
You already knew.
Yeah, so excited. I was ready to go to USC, go to their School of Journalism. I thought, all right, this is it. USC, I'll be close to home. Then there was a one day, one of those days that I was super exhausted. One of those days where, get up like 5, 6 and don't come home until 5. After practice, I'm taking a nap. I get home, I'm taking a nap before I start doing my homework. And my mom, she gets home, she sees an envelope from Harvard. And the envelope is just a regular sized envelope. And it was not time for acceptances yet from Harvard. That was supposed to be in late March. And so she thought that they just sent me a rejection letter right there, just like real quick.
Yeah.
It was February. So she didn't open it. Meanwhile, I'm asleep this whole time.
Yeah.
And she just has this light envelope, and she's thinking, man, how am I going to break it to Dennis? How am I going to tell him that he didn't get in? He wanted to go to Harvard so bad. So I'm asleep, and then moms will be moms. She opened the letter, and she found out that I got into Harvard. And so she ran to my room and woke me out of my sleep, and it was like, Dennis, you got into Harvard. And I was just like, still, I thought I was dreaming still. I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, look at this letter. And so then took it to the light, and then I read it, and it's like, yeah, it's a special letter that they sent to people, to admit that they really want to know that you are
prepare yourself.
Like, we're gonna accept you. It's like, I guess one way to say, like, we really thought your application was special. And so it went from like, wow, thinking that I was not gonna get in, because honestly, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how it looked to everyone on the outside, but I did not apply thinking, oh yeah, I got this in the bag. I know how hard it was. I had a high GPA, but I didn't have a perfect GPA. I had gotten some B's and a C in even one class. And so,
which was a blasphemy when we found out about that. we had to petition and make sure that had to change.
But it was, I think it helped that I think that I put my heart and soul into my essay that I wrote to apply, and being involved in things like the newspaper and basketball, I think made me stand out. And so, yeah, that was how I found out, and it was very, very exciting, very, very exciting time.
So here's what I will say, and this is for me personally on the outside, and this is what I think that people have to understand. It's not just grades. And this is something that I learned while my time at LA High, which it's not just grades. It's the school needs someone who's going to be just more than a bookworm. They need someone who's going to contribute to the community, who's going to contribute to the programs that they have there, who's going to be a leader. So I think that even though those tough days that were 5 to 5s, they were days that you were contributing to a basketball program. You were contributing to the school newspaper. You were doing your grades, obviously the essay, and then from me personally, from what we might have had conversations, I might get this wrong, but you were also doing some speaking events when you were younger. You were doing some speaking events, and you were winning those events.
I was, it was through the Boys and Girls Club. I was competing in the Youth of the Year competition, and so. I'm going to bring in my roots in Boyle Heights. So I went to, before going to LA High, I went to elementary and middle school in Boyle Heights, which is on the other side. For those who know LA, it's a predominantly Mexican neighborhood. And so I had my own way of standing out there. But I was involved in the Boys and Girls Club. That was really, aside from my mom, I think that the Boys and Girls Club really helped raise me as well. When she was at work, I mean, that's where I would go, and I would be able to just kind of grow up there. That was like the first indoor gym I played in, and I got homework help there and stuff. So by the time I got to high school, they have a Youth of the Year competition. that allows high school students to compete in a speech, essay, and like an interview, like a combination of those three things for scholarship money and to represent the Boys and Girls Club on the national stage.
Yeah.
So for junior and senior year, I competed both times and I made it all the way to the state competition. And yeah, it was a really cool experience. The first time that I really like prepared a speech and gave it to delivered it before an audience. Still some of the biggest crowds I've ever spoke before. So yeah, that was really cool.
And there are gonna be bigger ones coming forward for sure.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things that for me, knowing you, I know the hard work. You get me? Just watching you from the outside, I know the hard work and I know what it is. I think that people that live in this area particularly have had a bad perception towards our high school, towards Los Angeles High School. But you are the prime example that it doesn't matter what high school you go to. It just it just depends on A, the kind of work that you want to put through, and B, if you have goals that you want to achieve.
Exactly.
It's yes, you can say I want to be this, but what are the goals that you're knocking out of the way to get to that?
Right,
You get me? And the school, that's why they're schools. You get me? They've been accredited to be schools, and as long as you do your work, you can get into Harvard.
Right.
You can get into USC. You can get into all these schools. You just have to put in the work. And like I said, you're the prime example of that. We've always joked around that we believe that they should put a statue of you at the corner of Rimpau and Olympic.
Really? Yeah, that's funny.
And look, I've had conversations with Alex Amakwa. I've tried to get him on. We'll see if we're gonna have a Skype interview with him. Obviously, he's an Olympian, and if you being an Olympian in the hallways of LF High, anyone that's been there, or if you haven't, they have names of people that have done things, great things, and your name should go up there. We should definitely get that up there because there are a lot of things that you have already achieved that a lot of people at your age have not achieved yet. You get me? So there are a lot of things, Dennis, that you might not want to pump your chest out, but that's why I'm here and trying to get that stuff out there.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
But what do you think about the perception of LA High?
Well, yeah, I was going to comment that. I mean, it's interesting that I understand that LA High has that perception. Maybe it's not as prestigious of a school as some of like the more private schools or the schools on the west side, but LA had a lot of really great people, and it was not just that I went into this horrible school and I somehow was able to make it. No, I think that LA High had a very big part in it, and there were opportunities, right? And it had to do, I think, with a lot of faculty that cared and peers that cared. And so, yeah, if there weren't for Miss Burke, who is now teaching in Hawaii, wouldn't have had that newspaper opportunity. And wouldn't have had been able to talk about that on my college application if it were not for example, Mr. Weintraub. I don't know, did you have him as your ninth grade?
I had him as ninth grade, who was a great, he was a great English teacher. He also failed me. But he was one of those people who was real down to earth. Yeah. He was hardworking, and he was another person who would believe in you and go that extra mile to try to encourage you to do more. You get me? And he was really good at his job.
I really appreciate Mr. Weintraub. I still remember what I learned about English, and the first time I ever I read Shakespeare and thought about just like meter and those like, it made me think about literature in a deeper way, and I'm starting to see a theme. I mean, I also miss Perez in my 10th grade social studies teacher, who coincidentally has a connection to my current president at the organization I work with. They were very close friends, and so it was kind of cool. I'm still in touch with all these teachers, and it's because of the impact they had on me. I think
that there are great people that work there. I just think that it's us as students, or it's you guys as students that are listening, that have to put it in front. These teachers want to help. That's why they're teachers. But I believe that it's just us. Sometimes we all can be pain in the asses, whether we're adults, kids, or the older generation. You get me? It's just being able to listen to advice and take that, and then just trying to put your best foot forward, because that's what they did. I mean, I have had, like I told you before, I've had conversations with Ms. Burke. I wanted to thank her for everything she did, even though she failed me. It wasn't because of her; it was because of me. But even though that happened, she still had the belief in me to give me that co-editor in chief, which I didn't believe was enough. But not that it was enough, that I didn't believe I deserved it.
Okay.
So it was just one of those things. But Coach Hunter, Coach Cologne,
Right.
like all these people have had great impacts in us, and they're everywhere. Whether it's a coalition group, whether it's a community center, whether it's a school, you can find them everywhere.
Right.
So you then graduate high school.
Before we move on, I do want to talk about Coach Hunter a little bit, because Coach Hunter, who is someone that I really want to talk to soon. Before I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but I have plans to go back to the East Coast.
Yeah.
But yeah, Coach Hunter, I think a lot about the conversations we had off the court, because this is a basketball coach who is just like the most woke basketball coach. He was woke before I even like understood
what woke was.
What woke was. It wasn't really into, and really one of the few teachers that I just had these conversations with about like the Black Panthers, and he's the first person who showed me the song "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy. I remember how much he loved that song, and now I love that song. Back then I was like, this is just kind of old school.
It out.
But
you gotta
then
figure
I figured it out. I figured it out on my own, talking about Malcolm X, and we had just some great conversations. And so next time I see Coach Hunter, I want to give him this book that I wrote about Frederick Douglass. It's a short story. It's not fair to call it a book. It's just one short story that I worked on over the summer, and I want to see what he thinks. So Coach Hunter, if you're watching, I'm gonna come visit you soon.
And I can get you in contact with Coach Hunter for sure. Just to drop off on that. I've actually seen him one time. I've only seen him one time, and I've had a conversation with him, because one of the kids that I've coached now goes to Lehigh, and he's in the senior year, and he's also mentored by Coach Hunter. Personally, for me, Coach Hunter is one of those type of people that, for those of you that don't know him, he's a white male who's married to a Hispanic lady, and he's, like you said, the most woke person that you know. He is more into teaching about Black history. If you take his U.S. history class, he doesn't want you to learn what's in the textbook. He wants you to learn what actually happened. So for him and for me, it was learning things that I had never heard about. Bamboozled being one of those things, one of those films that he showed us with blackface and all that stuff. And you learn to, when you come from the neighborhood that we come from, it's just kind of, the white man's out to get you. But he's, like you, one of those people that shows you that there's a big difference. It's just these rotten apples that mess up the perception for everyone. So if you have a chance to speak to Coach Hunter, if you have a chance to meet him, just take everything you can, because he's a wise man.
Yes.
So
agreed.
So moving forward, so you then go to Harvard. You go there 4 years. You become one of the editors on the Harvard Crimson.
Yes.
How was that?
Yes. So that was really awesome. Harvard, I guess I'll talk about. So when people ask me about my transition to Harvard, coming from LA, inner city LA, to Massachusetts, to one of the most prestigious places in the world, I think about transition in 3 ways. One was just being away from family. That was big, being on my own for the first time. This is for anybody who has gone to school from like one place, and a place that is not in driving distance from home. You'll understand what I mean. And so that was an adjustment. I just becoming my own man. That was big. Number 2 was just the weather. Very real.
Oh man, we spoke off air. I've been there in the summer and it's hot. But the winters are cold.
The winters are something else. It's something that if you grew up in LA your whole life like I did, you can't even conceive of a cold that cold. But yeah, that was really what made it tough, is that, during the fall semester, once it's getting towards the end, it starts getting like crazy cold during the time when you got to be super focused and studying. So it did help that I had to stay indoors and stay and go to the library. Just, there's nothing else. Just go to the library and study. But it not be seeing the sun for so long and just kind of just only going and studying, whereas compared to here, I was like just used to going outside and playing basketball all the time and stuff like that. It actually affected me. It actually, the weather can change your mood. And so that was something that I had to learn to deal with. And then the last thing I'll say is just adjusting to the rigor of the work. Harvard was very hard. It was academically, to get like an A in a class, like you really had to go above and beyond. And that first semester, not that I didn't do well. I feel like I did solid. I did well my 4 years, but it was an adjustment, just learning how, okay, no, I can't just look at the title of a chapter and know what it's going to be about, or, you know, just be able to finish my homework like that. Like, no, I'm reading for the first time primary texts, like the actual Federalist Papers, for example, and I was a government major. And so, actually reading these words in, you know, 17th century English, 18th century English, 19th century English. It was definitely an adjustment. But one thing that I think helped me is that I was never afraid to ask for help.
Yes.
And it's something that I would like to just like address the audience. If you're a young person who's in college now, or you're in high school and you're about to go to college, and you're a person of color like me, I know that it is very intimidating to try to ask for help when you're in an all-white setting, and there's a professor here, a white professor, white classmates, and you don't want to appear like you're dumb. But the fact of the matter is that that's just the name of the game. You go to office hours, you go to tutoring, and it's not like you're getting help because you don't know it. It's because you're getting help because that's what a student does. A student is in the process of learning, right? So that's what tutoring is. It's not like I'm tutoring you because you're dumb. I'm tutoring you because every student needs to learn. And so
that's what the system is for. The system is for teaching.
Exactly.
And I think that also pertains to other things, which is just, hey, I want to learn how to do a new move in basketball. I might not know how to figure out. That's why there's coaches. You get me? And just ask for help. It's just a lot. Some of it might be that people think that there's gonna be a perception about them. They're not smart. The other thing, it may be pride. Pride might be something, I can figure this out on my own. But the teamwork is the biggest thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you go, and now you're learning. You're figuring out how hard it is.
Yes.
So once you transition and once you figure it out, when do you start laying back and just start enjoying it?
I would say it's more my second year. I still say that the greatest period of growth for me personally, as a man, has been between my first and second years of college. I think that I went into college and Harvard just expecting one thing, and after 1 year and going through all the different challenges and adjustments that I had to make, whether it's like living with roommates. I had it was 3 white roommates and me, and I had just being for the first time, like just really the only black person. And even though when I grew up I was the only black person in a predominantly brown community, now I'm one of the few black people in a predominantly white community. And so that was certainly an adjustment that I had to make. And the readings that I was doing at that time, it was the first time that I really took like an ethnic studies course, a black history class, and that just blew my mind. I mean, that was the first time that I really learned about someone like Frederick Douglass and what that did for my pride, what that did for just what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to help people, but you know, the joke in high school was, oh yeah, Dennis is going to run for president in 2036.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think that was just my way of saying like, I want to make a difference. Like Obama was elected my freshman year of high school, a big influence, right, in terms of just what he was able to accomplish. And so I think that was my thinking then. But then after my first year of college, I started to just think more about like, you know what, there's so many ways to make a difference. You don't need a title to do that. So I learned so much about like what I want to do, and really it's like in writing, speaking,
and just helping others. So you graduate from Harvard, and then you come back.
Yes.
So you come back, and around the time you come back is around 2016.
That's right.
From me, from knowing you. And around that time, the Colin Kaepernick situation starts happening.
Yeah.
So for me personally, being such a big NFL fan, being a sports fan in general, you have the Can't Breathe movement also happening at the same time. All the Black Lives Matters movement happening at the same time, and then you have Colin Kaepernick taking a knee for the national anthem.
Right.
So my initial response when I saw that, I was up for it. I didn't see taking the knee as something against veterans, something against the country. I saw him taking a knee during the national anthem because he was expecting the country to have higher standards for itself.
Right.
So that was me. But the initial response for him taking a knee from the league and from most journalism sites, most reporters was, oh, he's going against the military, he's going against the government, he's going against the country, the flag. What were your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts were very much in line with yours. I remember writing. I wrote about the Colin Kaepernick protest around the time it happened, and I thought it was very powerful. I thought it was a brilliant way to bring attention to something that most people would not think, oh, that has nothing to do with football. But if you're a citizen of this country or not, you're just someone who lives here, who believes in making this country the best that it can be, then we all have a stake in how our people are treated, right? By, especially when it comes to by the state. And so I thought that it was a brilliant way to
bring awareness.
Bring attention. And I don't think this whole idea of disrespecting the flag or disrespecting our troops because he's refusing to stand for the national anthem, I don't know if people realize what, first of all, the national anthem, the third, I can't remember which stanza it is. I think it's the stanza that is not sung, has some very, very horrible references to slavery in there, first of all. But just the idea that he's disrespecting the flag or the troops when he's very clearly out, when he's not doing that, he's talking about police brutality.
Yes.
And he's talking about just the just complete lack of attention. And he has a platform. Somebody who is in the NFL, is a black man. He has a platform. He has the ability to bring attention. A protest is not a protest if it does not disrupt, right? If I am just over here in my front yard, right, holding up a sign, and nobody passes by my front yard at all, yeah, I'm speaking up, but who is hearing me? What's the platform? How is it disrupting people? If you think back to the civil rights movement, you think back to the fact that they marched through major streets, they shut down bridges, they shut things down in order to get their point across. That's exactly what Colin Kaepernick did. Now, fast forward to 2017,
big difference.
Yeah, now the protest. So this is my opinion on the taking a knee after, once it became, in my opinion, co-opted. It became diluted. It wasn't the same because now you had owners of the NFL just kind of standing, locking arms and joining, and it was no longer about police brutality. It was now about resisting Trump's comments. It was now about kind of upholding your ego because Trump was insulting the NFL owners for not not trying
to control, quote unquote, and then this going to the Texans owner, the prison inmates, which is something that he had said about his NFL team, and the team didn't want to play. But you're right. So from what I saw was, and there's two parts to this. The very beginning, which the media took such negative stance towards him, then it grew, and he's been blackballed from the NFL. No team wants to sign him, and it's not that he's a bad quarterback. He's had a bad year, but he's better than maybe 4 or 5 quarterbacks that have starting jobs.
Right.
But his message ended up over time becoming a powerful one.
Right.
And just because of the type of person and the work that he does, obviously donating his money that he gets to charities and stuff like that. So he's not just using the platform to speak. He's using the platform for action.
Absolutely.
And then the NFL owners taking it against Donald Trump. Now that, like you said, has become diluted, but it's also become for the NFL to maybe distance itself from bad publicity. So I think that now it's not, like you said, it's not about taking a knee and about police brutality, but I also think that like Malcolm Jenkins from the Eagles is still trying to get that message out about, hey, look, we still need to build awareness because there's still things we need to fix.
That's great. That's great to hear. And I think that Colin Kaepernick is going to continue to do great work. I know he has his foundation up in the Bay Area, and he's constantly supporting the movement in different ways. And I think that like the knee, that symbolic gesture, that was very powerful. It's, I think now in the context of the NFL, it's just, you just have to find another tactic. But make no mistake, Colin Kaepernick has made himself legendary because of that. He, to me, is a modern day Muhammad Ali. He's a modern day Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in terms of just the activism. And I think that that's the beauty of sports, is that its politics is in there. It's not just sports. It is we all look at it, especially because of race and how much it's ingrained into how we think about sports. It was a way for us to have this conversation, and because of Colin Kaepernick and his courageous stand, he pretty much sacrificed his career in the NFL, much like how Muhammad Ali was, rather than go fight for a war he didn't believe in his prime, it cost him 3 years of his prime, right? Same thing for Colin Kaepernick, but we remember Muhammad Ali as the greatest. We remember him more because of his activism, and I think that's how we'll remember Colin Kaepernick. He could have won, two Super Bowls in these last 2 years, and it still wouldn't have had the same impact that taking the knee did. So yeah, very proud of Colin.
It's just those small gestures that end up the snowball effect leading to it, and his thing is probably not to become like Muhammad Ali. His thing is just to create awareness, whether it's his name or someone else's name. It probably doesn't matter to him, but that, in effect, I can see that influenced you a lot. So then, like I said, you graduate, you come back, and then now you start working at this coalition and let people know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm working at Community Coalition, which is in South LA. Community Coalition has been doing work to transform the economic and social conditions in our neighborhood for the last 25 plus years. And the Community Coalition started off as just a group of providers and social workers and people that cared about the community, that wanted to do something about the crack epidemic in the late 80s, early 90s. And our current congresswoman who represents this area, her name is Karen Bass. She was the principal founder of the coalition, the first president of the coalition. And she still works very closely with us on a lot of these issues. But yeah, the coalition has done a lot of work in terms of increasing the amount of equity in educational funding for schools in South Central. There was a major campaign in the early 2000s to get A through G mandated throughout LAUSD. There was a long time when a lot of high school students were graduating as valedictorians and getting great grades, but they were ineligible to apply to Cal State University LA or UCLA because their school did not have the required A through G class, right? And so it was about raising the bar and have the same expectation for South LA and the same resources for those expectations as in other places. And so that was one of the big campaigns that the coalition was a big part in. Some of the work that I'm involved in now has a lot to do with school discipline. I am our staff lead for the Brother Son Selves Coalition, which is like a larger coalition that of other orgs in South LA, Long Beach, and East LA. And we are working to try to uplift the voices of Black and brown young men, and we're trying to change the ways that schools discipline kids. throughout the state.
Yeah.
And so one of the big issues is that it's black and brown kids are disproportionately, not just young men, even especially young black girls, they are suspended and kicked out of school permanently at a much higher rate than their peers. And it's just strictly because of race and because of the internalized anti-blackness that we have in this country. So I think that we've done a lot of good work. We're going to continue doing that kind of work. And even this year, we are going to be launching some new campaigns. We're getting involved in a lot of things around changing some like corporate loopholes. There's something called the Make It Fair, Make It Fair campaign to try to change this loophole in Proposition 13. For folks that may not know at home, it's a law that was passed in 1978 that pretty much kept property taxes stagnant in 1978, but corporations have taken advantage of it and have been paying the same taxes as on their property since 1978, when it was actually just designed for individual homeowners and small businesses. So the bottom line is that loophole is costing schools throughout California billions of dollars a year. That's money that could be going to schools rather than corporations kind of just keeping that in their pocket. So we'll be doing that, some stuff on bail reform, and some stuff on just continue to bring more money to schools in South LA. Yeah,
well, like I see you doing the coalition work, and I see everything you just mentioned, and this is exactly why I want the podcast. You get me? For me, the goal is to allow you to have a platform, much more so than maybe just speaking. What I would like to build this is for fun, for knowledge. I want to have more people on here like you. I want to have more people that are artists and maybe actresses and actors and poets or writers, and so I want to have a diverse group, and all because I know that the diversity is what helps out. So we can then create more awareness from maybe people that would normally not hear from you.
Right.
So all this work, where could they find that?
Right. So folks that are interested, if you're in LA, or if you just want to support what we're doing here in South Central, you can go to cocosouthla.org, COCO South SOUTHLA.org, and you can support us in a number of ways, coming out to some of the events that we have where we're bringing the community together. We also have a membership. A membership structure. You can become a member of our organization for as little as $30 a year, and your membership goes towards helping our organization do more things that are not tied to specific grants that we have, but just like being able to support our young people, for example, with a college trip. This is something that we do every November. We take our young people up to the Bay Area and expose them to colleges that they may not have ever had a chance to see. We've gone up, we've seen Stanford, UC Berkeley, San Francisco State. We're able to do a lot of that stuff through the support of our membership.
So right before, obviously, we wrap this up, there's a couple things that I want to ask you. The book.
Okay,
so
yes, the book.
I've seen it. It's on Amazon.
Yes.
So for anyone that wants to purchase it, it's on Amazon. We'll have all the information in the description. So what led you to write this?
Right. So this is a really interesting story. I took my favorite class of college my senior spring. So the last class, pretty much the last class I took in college was my favorite one. And it was a class that was about the parallel lives of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, who was an abolitionist, an extraordinary speaker and writer in the 19th century. Actually, the most famous black man in America and in his time. And through some recent research of the professor who I took the class with, his name is Professor John Stauffer. He co-authored a book that revealed that Frederick Douglass was the most photographed American in the 19th century, even more so than Abraham Lincoln, which is pretty remarkable. Yeah. So in this class, I took a particular interest in Frederick Douglass's life as someone who was born into slavery, did not know who his father was, and whose mother passed away when he was maybe 7 years old. He only knew her a couple of times. She was pretty much like a stranger to him, right? And so somebody who was born into pretty much the most difficult, most extreme of conditions possible, rises up and learns to first of all teaches himself how to read, and uses his words, his very fiery and passionate words, to make a huge impact on this country during a time that was the question of slavery was really hanging in the balance. This country could have gone all slave or all free. It was not gonna be in between like it was. And so Frederick Douglass, who, if you've seen, for example, the movie Lincoln in 2012, that was a movie about Abraham Lincoln and him trying to get the 13th Amendment passed to abolish slavery in the Constitution. Someone like Frederick Douglass does not appear in that movie at all, right? Yes. And it's kind of unfortunate that we don't have a lot of I think in our current culture, when we think about social justice, we think more about the 1960s because it's more relevant, and of course there are many heroes in the 1960s. But I just took a particular interest in Frederick Douglass because I was just inspired by his ability to teach himself how to read and write, and use that to not only free himself but to just be the most patriotic American there is. And so that's why I have the book. It has an American flag, because I think that it's very interesting to juxtapose the image of Frederick Douglass, a black man, onto the American flag, right? I mean, I think a big thing that a big reason why we have racism in this country is because a lot of people don't see, when you think of American, you don't think your first thought is not a black man. Your first thought is not that is what a citizen of this country is, right? And so this book, it comes out of that class because we had a creative final project, and I wanted to, I learned something really interesting about Frederick Douglass in that class. In 1864, he was talking to Abraham Lincoln Abraham Lincoln was facing re-election. If Abraham Lincoln lost that election, this country, slavery would not have been settled then. His opponent, who was a pretty much like pro-slavery, was going to allow it. He was going to just this war, there have been hundreds of thousands of people that have died. Let's just end this. You guys can keep slavery where it is. But Frederick Douglass was one of those people who really pushed Abraham Lincoln to do what helped save this country. And so what this book is about is a conversation that actually did happen between Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln about going into the South and using like a special task force. We're talking about like 007 espionage. Like once I was thinking about that, I was like, dang, this is really dope. And so having that real conversation that happened about something called the John Brown Plan. I don't want to go so deep into all this because I'm just talking about. Yes, it's all in the book. Okay. It's all in the book, and pretty much what I want to say is that this is the plan ended up not happening. They didn't actually go into and behind enemy lines and free slaves like this, but it almost did happen, and it would have happened if there was not a big turning point in the war that made this not necessary. But basically, this is a book about Frederick Douglass leading a group of ex-slaves like himself back into the heart of slave country, and trying to rescue his brothers and sisters. And so, this book is available on Amazon. And it's based on a short story that Frederick Douglass himself wrote called The Heroic Slave. And that's why that's the title. It's Frederick Douglass, the Heroic Slave. He is now the heroic slave in this narrative. It's awesome, man. It's awesome when, obviously, like I told you at the very beginning of this, I have to do my homework, even if it's a little bit. And I found out about the book. I'm trying to figure out more about you. Obviously, with this conversation, I've learned so much. But there are two more things that I need to get cleared up. Okay. One of them being, obviously, that you yourself
have always wanted to be president. You, or at least that's what the conversation was.
Yeah, I'll say it like that. That's the conversation.
That's what the conversation was. But obviously, now going how you said, you're from your first year to your second year, things have changed. Has that goal ended?
I would not say that the goal is ended. I think it's I guess it's a good opportunity to just talk about it. So I think ever since I was young, even before high school, people have always kind of like called me president, or like he's going to be president.
Dennis.
Yeah,
President
like he's going to be president one day. And it had a lot to do with just, I think, the way I carry myself, my skill set, my ability to write and speak. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we had our first black president whose terms coincided with my entire high school and college. Exactly. I entered high school when he was elected, and I left college when he was his last year in office. And so, yeah, that was like a common joke growing up. And eventually I came to like embrace and like, you know what, I could see myself in politics one day, because I think that I have the integrity. And I think I have the integrity, first of all, to go into a position of power and not let things get to my head. Like, I've always been someone who was like,
level-headed.
I just want to, I want to do the right thing. I want to do the right thing. I want to give back. I want to represent in the right way. But when I look at politics now, and I mean, we're talking about this right now as the government has been shut down because the Republican lawmakers are not able to recognize a lot of the people in this country as that people deserving of a chance of a pathway to citizenship. But that's for a different conversation.
Yes, 100%.
But the point is that politics is a very it's an ugly business. It's an ugly business. And I am very, I think like a lot of people my age, I'm looking at them like, look at what it takes to run for president. Like, first of all, it requires a lot of money, a lot of money. And once and that's money I don't have, and money that once you have it, like, I'm always been afraid, like, if I'm ever rich and I have a lot of money, like, how do you maintain your principles? How do you not be beholden? How do you not owe something to other people, right? And so over time I'm thinking like, man, I don't know, first of all, whether I'll be like, if that's the most effective way. I mean, I'm trying to think about like, as a president, how much power do you actually have, right? And number two, would I be happy thinking about the way that Obama was treated as president? Thinking it became a joke, but like, thanks Obama, being blamed for a lot of things, right? And so I think that politics, especially local politics, there's a lot of potential and to do a lot of great things, and to really and I've not ruled out politics in the future, but right now I'm actually more focused on
the coalition work.
On the coalition work, and actually in the fall I'm going to be going back to Harvard for law school. I'll be going back, and I'm going to be starting my first year of law school this fall, and I want to come back to the community after I get my law degree to work in the areas of housing and education, because from these last 2 years working with young people, I've seen that those are like the two really big areas that are affecting families so much, right? And so, I think that right now that's what I have the more impact, the more potential to do. And the idea of becoming president is just something that motivates me to
get
just
to
remember,
the next step.
Like, let me just see how I can help. Like, without that title, how can I make a difference? That's what I'm thinking about more now.
So then the last thing, it obviously ties in perfectly the way that you put everything together. While doing my research about you and trying to get all of this ready to go, I came across something that you had posted, which was a quote by Senator Mike Johnston. And the quote started off with him saying that the question was not, what will you be when you come back? The question is, what problem will you solve?
Right.
So I feel that when I read that affected me in the way that I said, this is what I love to do. This is what I feel I'm best at. I love movies. I love music. I love sports. I love video games. I love cars. I love all these things. I enjoy all these things. But what stands out about it? And it's having the conversation about how amazing these things are.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to this podcast. And that it also figured it out. It allowed me to figure out, hey, let me find all these people who love the same things as well. So now that I read that quote, I said, well, can I use this for a positive? And I said, hey, look, I can have people like you. I can have people that are also trying to make a difference and provide a platform.
Yeah.
So what problem will I solve? My answer to that is not just one problem, but it's creating a platform for you to bring up a situation so we can all solve that problem.
Right.
Because not one person can handle all that burden.
Yeah.
It has to be both of us together to fix something. So I always thought of it as, this is the way that I think of it. I don't care how many people listen to this podcast. All I care about is if it affects one person. If I can affect one person, then I did my job. And if that one person can then work hard to affect someone else, then I had part in that, like an assist. A point guard, I can score 2 points, but it gives me more satisfaction in you running the break with me and me giving you the balls to allow you to score. We both contribute.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. That's what I feel. That's what problem will I solve? And it's just me creating the assist.
Yeah.
So how does that figure out to you?
Well, I'm glad you brought up that quote, because that quote, Mike Johnston, he's a state senator in Colorado, who came and visited an education class that I was taking my senior year. And he gave that quote, and I was really impacted by that. I ended up writing my last article for the Harvard Crimson was that article where I asked this question, because that was one thing that I noticed about Harvard and the culture at Harvard that really made me want to come back. And it was, I noticed that I was part in falling into a culture of like, what title am I going to get next? Right. This goes back to your question about like being present. And I think that when I was a lot younger, I was like, if I have the highest title, right? And the highest title in American politics is president, then I've succeeded. And then I think about it, I was like, no, not really. As I did more soul searching and looked at who are the people in history who really made a difference, right?
Yeah.
Didn't have that title. Then I thought, no, that I actually want to make an impact, just like you want to make with this podcast. And so with that quote, I wrote that article, and I kind of it was addressing my Harvard classmates, the class of 2016, that we're all going to go on and do amazing things, right? We had this incredible privilege to be Harvard students. But what are you going to do? Is it really success if you go on and you just kind of do something that makes you richer, your life better? Or are you going to truly be great and use this platform to help other people, right? That's true greatness. It's giving the assist, right? It's and so that has really been part of my thinking over the last 2 or 3 years, is just how am I going to use the incredible privilege that I have? Because, I don't think that I'm the smartest person or the most hardworking person in the world or even in this community. I just had the things kind of fall in line for me, and I had incredible support from people in my family and in my life that allowed me to be where I'm at now, doing something that I love. And so I always have to give back, or else I just feel very selfish if I'm only thinking about me. Like, no, I have to think about what am I going to do to help everybody, right? As many people as I can. And so that's what that quote means to me. What problem are you going to solve rather than what title you're going to have? And I'm going to hold on to that for as long as I can.
Yeah, it's that title impacted me a lot, and reading that last post that you posted for the Harvard Crimson is something that will be another addition and to continue to strive forward, and hopefully this grows. And we've had that conversation before we went live, that hopefully the next time you come on, we'll still be here in the same setting, just because I hope you come on sooner. Hopefully it's before you go to law school, and or maybe when you come back on break, and then maybe 3 or 4 times down the line, it'll just be a studio you give me and we'll have something set up.
All right.
But that's where can people reach you?
Okay, so people can reach me, can see everything that I write and my videos. The best place is just to go to my website, which is DennisOjogho.com. It's how my name is spelled, just Dennis, DennisOjogho.com. And there you'll be able to access my YouTube channel, where anytime I have a speaking engagement, I'll have it there. My writing, currently writing on medium.com. And so there's a link to that page there. And yeah, you can just get also a direct link to where to buy this book. It's on Amazon, but if you want to go to my website first, you'll have a direct link there. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And I really thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting my brother here. And
thank you for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we could do this soon.
All right, man.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Good, man. All right.